we're going to go to our last one-on-one interview with our final speaker, which is Eiffel Mattsson, who is all the way from Sweden, producer and head of production for Yellowbird Film and Television. Now, I was about to start into like a Skål Heilongor Swedish drinking song, but I realized that I don't have a beer like I normally do at Soho Media Club. So I'll just imagine that happened in my head. So welcome, Eiffel, all the way from Sweden. Very international Soho Media Club. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at Yellowbird.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on board. It's such great company to be part of this panel. So I always think I started in this business yesterday, but I realize it's like 20, 30 years it was passed by this like that. And basically I started and left the business and I came back, and I've done that a couple of times, but I've stuck to this business for the last 20 years, coming back to college, doing media on a university level. And since then, I've been specializing in production management, producing, going from production manager to line producer. And lately, I've been lucky to be the head of production at Yellowbird, because the company is now growing. It's an amazing opportunity now for many companies in the Nordics, where there's a big demand for content, which of course created this perfect storm of many productions starting to go right at the time when the COVID pandemic just started.
So speaking of COVID, tell us a little bit more about the productions you've been working on as those sandwiches popped up on cue.
Well, it's not a very pretty picture, but it's an example of like small little details, what's going on in productions. This is just an example how catering needs to be compartmentalized, because of course the less contact between the crew members, the better when it comes to the infection rates, etc. So in this case, we're wrapping up all the foods. We're making sure there's distance in the lineups. Well, gloves. It's not much difference what's going on in the rest of the world, of course. It's part of how we're adapting to the situation while we're shooting.
I mean, you know what? You've carried on with some productions, which is pretty amazing in itself, when there is the fear living everywhere about what to do, you know, with your crew, with what's happening with production, even from writers to runners and the funding and everything in between. Can we divert slightly? I would love to hear a little bit more about how what is your philosophy and as a producer, and is there a difference between like that Nordic way and kind of the rest of the world, vertical and horizontally type of productions?
Well, the Nordic way, it sounds a bit fancy to say so, but
it is fancy.
Until a couple of years ago, we still do. We have a much more horizontal hierarchy way of working. So it's a very close collaborative work, where the decision making, it's not one person making all the decisions. You are basically having decision makings done throughout the whole spectrum of the team, which works well when we're just 20, 30, maybe 35 behind the camera. But even the Nordics are getting international. We're growing in size. And while we're growing in size, then it becomes more essential to have the more international way of filmmaking, which is having a vertical hierarchy. Well, the decision making is left to more managerial type of people.
Yeah, right. So, and now, how does that? Are there flaws in that model, or do you find that normally works in quite a smooth manner? Because I suppose if someone's starting off in the industry, they start that way, don't they? Rather than,
let me put it this way: there's a certain nostalgia going on right now, and going back to smaller crews, because there's an advantage of having smaller crews now during the pandemic. So the old ways of doing shooting film, which is, when I say old, we're talking in Sweden 10 years ago,
right.
people are talking and going back into that, and to keeping the team small, making it a bit more manageable, and especially when we have so much content demands, because even through the pandemic, all the streamers, all the broadcasters are still asking for content.
So speaking of which, we didn't really dip into yet the popularity of Nordic noir. Nordic noir, say that 10 times, people. Do you find that this is still a genre that's in demand, either by the industry or the audience in general? So with Yellowbird making a lot of like high-end dramas, and the way that Nordic noir fits in there, do you see that that's having a lot more longevity than people might expect?
Longer than we thought. I mean, and we're happy for it, of course. I mean, we have the history of Wallander and Millennium behind us, which was a great part of our company's legacy. And but we are not only depending on the Nordic noir, but we're happy to continue to do so at the same time that we are widening our horizons and looking to the other genres. So recently, we're doing fantasy, we're doing adventure stuff, we're doing thrillers. So we're trying to show the global audience that the Nordics can create not just the Nordic noir as a genre. There's more to offer from us, so to speak.
Exactly. And you've got all the girl with the tattoo series behind under the belt as well, which are, I much prefer the Swedish version films, by the way. They smash everything. They smash it. And then what about, what is production going to be like for you in the next couple months, let alone the next 12 months?
Well, it's a bit double-sided because we specialize in doing international setups, but at the same time we have local productions going on. So Sweden, luckily, has been one of the countries that had restrictions that are applicable for shooting. So we're able to shoot even through restrictions. But at the same time, any production that has had any detail part of the production or the whole production going outside. I mean, I have personally was overseeing a production that was supposed to be shot in Lithuania, and the weekend before principal photography was supposed to be started, we got the call where we say, "You got 4 hours. We are closing down the borders." And in this case, we didn't have the crew in Lithuania, and the decision making there was, okay, well, let's hope this eases and then we can come back. And basically we have to leave the country, and now we're 2 months, 3 months afterwards, collaborating very closely with the broadcasters, discussing all the options, going up through the ABC alternatives in order to come back. Because I mean, in this industry, you never give up. Once you start something, you want to finish it.
Right.
And at the same time, we got 3 other productions that were completely local, and they only had to go through the Swedish restrictions, and 2 of them are complete, and 1 of them is about to be completed. And you saw some of the pictures from those productions.
Right. So it's a mix of kind of persevering, mixed with safety first, mixed with the show must go on.
Always safety first. Always safety first. Safety but first. I mean, there's a couple of different ways that we've been affected. Logistics, things we're avoiding to have using public transport. People are more or less transported with own drivers or going by taxis.
Yeah.
At the same time, flights and trains have become more expensive because the restrictions that have been applied make the schedules more apart. And Sweden, even though our population is not that big, the country is quite large. So, and we choose for scenic views to shoot in really far away places. And normally, the infrastructure normally is very good. But when we have the pandemic going on, then the tables get turned and you have to manage it in another way.
Yeah. And does all of that pivoting and the tilting and managing different ways fit in with your personal philosophy in production?
Yeah, I mean, my personal philosophy is that in order to get into this type of living, you need to get a taste of the different parts of movie making and drama production, because there's always a fire to extinguish. And I mean, when I became a head of production a year ago, I was thinking, oh, lovely, now I get to get an insight in different productions at the same time instead of being focused in one production. Little did I know that this year will be proving to be quite a few fires to extinguish. But
Yeah.
I have amazing colleagues that are handling their productions, that the producers and their respective line producers and production managers are balancing, so to speak, every production in different ways, but still managing quite well with the restrictions that we have back here in Sweden.
Right. Well, I mean, we commend you for persevering in the safest way possible. So thank you so much, Eiffel. Really appreciate that.